Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I'm watching. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Person of Interest. This is a very interesting episode because it kind of flips flat. It's not like a half and half, but it's like a big part of this episode. It's the machine showing Harold kind of a what if scenario. Basically, she kind of breaks it down into percentages of like the likelihood of these events happening, kind of after, I guess, running countless simulations of what the world would be like without her in it, like without the existence of the machine, because she's like, you're regretting doing what you have to do with this virus, whatever the ramifications. At that point in time, we didn't really know the full scale of what it was capable of. So it's like, okay, without the ramifications of what it's doing, but you're in this position and you regret it. It's like, does that mean you also regret me? And and she was like, I'm gonna show you what the world would be like if I was not in that position. And it was kind of it was a very interesting situation. I mean, obviously, we'll run through everyone's situations first, and then I'll say what I was going to say. But first, you see Harold. With him, obviously, no injury, and Nathan's still alive, and they have a very successful partnership. Harold always did feel like, from the simulation, it's like, oh man, I wish we had kept going with the government work, what would have eventually led to them creating the machine. But it's like, honestly, we could have actually done something even greater with our lives. But then Nathan was like, yeah, but, don't discount those government people. Even without us, I'm sure they found someone else to, push that along, because it's not just, we would have probably helped it come along a little faster. We probably set them back a tiny bit, but they would have immediately got someone else to work on it. And sadly, he never actually met Grace, just because the way circumstances worked. It seems like at that time, with the way that simulation worked, he was fully focused on work. So that's all that he really had time for. Because even Nathan was like, oh, I got this friend of my wife's that, you should come hang out with us. He's like, no, I got work. I'm happy. So he was very content with his life, but circumstances would have never allowed him to meet Grace. So there's that. Who was next? It was Fusco. Fusco would have never, like, the reason why Fusco turned around altogether was because of Reese's intervening. Initially, obviously, Fusco was a bad guy, but, obviously he had his reasons. It's just like, you have other dirty cops around you. It kind of swayed him into, he kind of got grouped together. And John, obviously, threatening his life and kind of putting him in compromising positions led to him becoming a good guy. It's very interesting when you think about it, that they are where they are now, where John actually trusts Fusco. It's something that I did, like, I let that kind of sit through my mind when it's like, oh yeah, when you hear John talking about, like, oh, he trusts Fusco, Fusco's his partner, he wants to let him in on it. It's like, at one point in time, he looked at Fusco as nothing. A couple years ago, he looked at Fusco as nothing more than like a tool, and helping him take down some like dirty cops and figure out some stuff. He needed a cop on his side. Obviously, Carter was someone on his side, but at the same time, she was okay with what he was doing, but she still, as a law enforcement officer, because he was acting outside of the law, had to actively go after him. And because of that, he got locked up. He got arrested too with the rest of the HR. Obviously, he served the least time because he was kind of smaller in the food chain, and he was willing to turn around on him. Because when he went into the police station, everyone was like, "Oh, is that Fusco?" When that happened, I was like, "Oh, what's this about?" And you had that cop, what's his name, Stilansky. Like, I forgot what happened to him. That was so freaking long ago. Like I said, my problem when I don't rewatch previous seasons, like, granted, that was like early like stuff, so like it's understandable why I wouldn't remember, but nevertheless, it'd probably be a little bit clearer in my mind if I went back, especially before this season has started, to go back from the beginning and see everything unfold. Good side of that situation, I mean, obviously it sucks because Fusco was bad. Like, he never turned himself around and became a good guy because of John's interference. But Carter actually became lieutenant after she busted everyone in HR. Sadly, we didn't get to actually see Taraji. You can only assume that while this was being filmed, she was probably still filming stuff for, Empire, or maybe just her schedule in general was full, so they couldn't bring her back. I was just like, oh, are we going to see Carter? It's like, oh no, her empty desk. It would have been cool to see Taraji, but I guess it's like, since her character died, she's made one appearance, so I was like, that at least there's that. I wanted to at least see her in one more time. Just again, it's just like, I miss you so much as Carter, so it's just like, it's like, outside of the show, it's just like I've always wished Taraji like the best of luck, and I mean, and she's doing good work on Empire, so it's like more power to her. It's just like it's just like I grew attached to her as Carter. That's all I'm saying. But that was kind of an interesting touch. It did say like the machine did say like, oh, at least because Finch had been like, okay, at least Carter is still alive, but she's like, yeah, but there are circumstances to that. Things are more complicated than they seem. We got to see Shaw. Shaw still worked for her previous employer, Control. She still worked with them, kind of doing kind of wet work. Ended up killing a guy who apparently was someone from earlier in the series. He kind of discovered about the machine, the government having a way of spying on all of its people, and kind of came to Harold, and Harold was basically like, you know what you need to do? This is why he's doing his whole thing with irrelevant numbers, and he was just like, walk away, get away from the situation before it escalates. Sadly, in that alternate what if situation, Shaw ended up killing him. Granted, her partner was still alive, so that was a good thing. But granted, in their line of work, there's no telling how long that would have lasted. But I feel like it's because they didn't find out the truth that it led to her partner died because they ended up stumbling upon the truth and they needed to be eradicated, essentially. But it seems like in that what if situation, they stayed ignorant, so he probably stayed alive. It does make you wonder what would have happened with that situation because she did get very close to him, as we could see that she came to care about him. He wasn't just like a partner to her. I don't know if there was ever any like intimate feelings, but nevertheless, what was also thrown in there is like if Shaw would have stayed, especially because it also meant that she would have never met Root. But Harold countered that with saying, yeah, but she never would have lost her neither. And then I was like, okay, so we're building up because like there's two more people we could cover, and they did the final two people. John, well, that was really sad. I was like, wow. It's like, yeah, you knew things could only end kind of badly for John. Essentially, John got back from work. He got away from the CIA, came back, was able to show up in time to save his wife. Remember, like her new husband? Ended up killing her. Granted, because he was a bit abusive and he accidentally killed her, but he set the whole situation to make it look like a car accident. And I definitely remember that. But John showed up in time to, like, I guess, beat him up or maybe even killed him. But his wife was so terrified. She was so sad and shocked by seeing that darker side of him, because that was a side of him she had never seen before, because he'd always kept that side of him away from her. That's kind of why he kept her at a distance, because he wanted her to be happy, even with him, him being what he is and doing the work that he does. But she was so distraught by that she just got away from him. And they didn't outright say it, but it seems like he was so depressed by it that he ended up killing himself. It's like they found his body in the river or something like a few days later or something. So it's like he killed himself. It's like, wow. And then finally we got to look at Root. I was wondering if we were going to get to it or not. I was like, oh, maybe we're not going to. But I was like, nah, that'd be a little messed up not to get Root one. It's like, don't worry, Root got one. Apparently, without the machine around, Root ended up, circumstances, obviously we don't get the full scope of it, but circumstances led to her working for Samaritan. But it's kind of like she came after the machine because she respected it as like a huge ASI, which I can only assume it means artificial super intelligence. Obviously, that's just my idiotic brain thinking. I mean, sure, it probably stands for something else, but that's when I heard that. It's the first thing that came to my mind. All I think is like just simply refer to it as AI. Why add the S? I don't know. But, obviously she was always fascinated with that. Because I was wondering, like, maybe if it weren't for the machine, maybe Root's life would have taken like a bad turn. I mean, takes a bad turn, but at very least she'd be alive. But she was one of their operatives. It's like, oh man, it looks like someone's getting a little. Oh, this senator, it looks like he's getting a little too big for his britches. And Root's like, okay, let me take care of him. So that was kind of. It didn't seem like she had the intimate relationship with Samaritan that she does with the machine. It looks like she was just kind of a foot soldier. So kind of a bit of a demotion, if you ask me, but. That was a big part of this episode, just because Harold's trying to balance out with what he should do versus, because he's so regretful about this whole situation, especially when you find out, because the way they had it phrasing, it's like, oh yeah, this virus is super powerful because the guy when he's putting a virus together at the beginning, because he needed a program or something from that guy that he had broken into his house and stuff, he's like, oh, you're going to shut down the internet. He said, been there, done that. It's like, no, I'm after something much bigger. So it's like, this thing has the potential to wipe out the internet. So just can't imagine. Can you imagine what it can do to Samaritan? But we end up finding out what it can do. Not only will it kill Samaritan, but it will also wipe out the machine too. That's a double-edged sword. And it kind of, ends up in a conversation between Greer and Harold. Because interestingly enough, his number came up to John and Shaw, because it was kind of like, oh, does that mean he's going to kill Harold, or does that mean Harold is going to kill him, even if it means he has to die trying? So, but what ended up happening, it led to many different conversations. Obviously, Greer talking to him, being like, oh, look at all the great things Samaritan does. It's like, really? What about all the countless people it's killed? It's like small, like kind of, it's like, oh, they're the minority that has been wiped out so that, the majority can survive. It's like, I mean, in layman terms, go fuck yourself. That's so messed up to have that mentality. It's like no amount of people should be sacrificed just for the greater good, just because it's like your warped perspective of like, oh, what's right and what's wrong, especially when you compare it to the fact that Samaritan, because that was kind of what Harold kept throwing out. Is like, and I've kind of brought it up before too, is the fact is Samaritan will eventually reach the point that it will no longer think humans are relevant. It's already to that point. It kind of thinks, even people in powerful positions that if they're removed, remember the whole president situation, if the president was removed, it could lead to like catastrophic effects kind of around the world. Yet it felt the president was irrelevant. So it's like eventually it would be to the point that it gets so powerful that it's like humans are nothing more than ants. It kind of treats humans as little pets and ants already. So it's kind of like, what will it do in a couple years? Will it eventually just be like humans are nothing? They're just insignificant. They're already somewhat insignificant. They still serve a purpose to it. So who knows what would happen. And it just kind of came down to like a conversation of, because like Greer's kind of like, you're trying to fight this, but it's going to happen whether you like it or not. He's like, what do you think is going to happen when it all comes down to this? It's like, when it's all said and done, Harold's like, the world will go back to the way it was and humans will be able to make their own choices. Essentially, Greer's kind of like, the humans can't be trusted, with their own survival. But Harold's like, no matter what, like, calamities or struggles come humanity's way, even when we fall, we always rise back. We always stand up. So it's like, no matter the adversity, we will persevere, like we always do throughout the countless existence of humanity. So, but I mean, the whole thing, like, granted, it seemed like Greer was still trying to shift Harold and the machine, because apparently he was like, essentially a flood is coming, a metaphorical flood, obviously, in a sense, because it's like Samaritan is bringing a flood, and only like I said, the select few can join the ark that is building. It's building a lifeboat that people will join 2 by 2. It's like not even only just the future of humanity here on Earth, but even going as far as saying like, oh yeah, maybe like, when the time comes, Samaritan could lead us to another colonizing, struggling on it, colonizing on another planet. I nailed it that time, first try, right? But the whole thing was a ploy to simply get Harold to admit that he's the only one that knew the password, that the machine didn't know it, because the machine would never act without his orders, because he's like, you would never give up that control. Because essentially it also wanted the machine, at least to his words, because the Samaritan needed a companion, because it's like they are the only two of their kind, the machine and Samaritan. They're the only super intelligent beings, so it needed its help. Like I said, still I don't know whether that was all 100. Was that like there's some truth to that, or was that 100% just to get him to admit like, oh, I'm doing it when it knows the password? Greer was so dedicated to his mission, thinking what he was doing all right, literally locked him and Harold in a room where the air was being sucked out. And he ended up dying, and he was okay with it because it meant Harold would die with him, and meaning the virus would die with him as well. What we end up finding out, though, is that the machine actually knew the password the entire time. It could have done it, but it didn't want to act without Harold's permission. Because at the end of the day, the machine knew exactly. It kind of pieced everything together, because Harold kind of had said as much. The machine kind of pieced together. It's smart enough to realize this virus will not only take down Samaritan, it will also take it down. And it's like, okay, so, it actually had the password, and it could have mimicked Harold's voice, but it didn't, because it wanted to be Harold's choice. No matter what is all said, when all is said and done, it is Harold's choice, because Harold is its father. It's her, like, that's her creator, so it's up to him to make the final choice, because this is kind of his battle too. So, which apparently the password was Deadwood. Now, granted, I didn't want to read too much into it, because I had to get this recorded as quickly as possible, just because of pressing circumstances. So I won't really have too much time to record it tomorrow. So I looked into it a little bit. Apparently, it's the last name of a character from... Wait, was it Deadwood? No, I don't know why I think it was. I said Deadwood because I was thinking of the TV show. It's Dashwood. It's apparently the last name of a character from a Jane Austen book. Was it Sense and Sensibility? Is what it was, I think. Something like that. That's as far as I read it. It's like something I randomly Googled. I saw that line. I didn't even click on the link. It's just, I was like, oh, I don't know. Because I was thinking like, oh, that's some serious significance, doesn't it? I was like, I guess if you look at the circumstance, I don't know. Maybe it's connected. Because the fact is, Harold, like the whole operation was originally set up in a library, like the machine back in the day, like in the earlier seasons, like Harold would work out of a library, and he was really big into books. So maybe that book held significance to him. Plus, maybe if you know the details of the book, maybe that's what it also signifies. Maybe it reflected the current situation or something. Maybe that book has some correlation with this series, in a sense of their certain, obviously the circumstances are different, but maybe there's some correlation in the fact is of the overall, like, oh, maybe maybe there's a situation where characters have to battle moralities just like in this series as they would in that book. Don't know. If you do know more information about it, do let me know if you've gotten time to really look at it yourself. You're like, oh yeah, I like the show, and I'm just like, I had to look into it myself, Michael, so I looked it up, and here's an explanation of it. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I'd probably end up looking more into it after this. Probably if I get some free time tomorrow, but it's just something I was like I said, I just assumed it was something that held significance to the show, because I'd never really heard that brought up before. But once again, it has to be connected to the fact that he has his own little library. So, yeah, those were the heaviest parts of the episode. Obviously, kind of John and Shaw not really having too many big parts in this episode. Obviously, they had to worry about sneaking in to follow after Harold, and it seems like they got out at the nearing the end of the episode. But Harold did activate the virus, and didn't almost completely living out Fusco, because there was kind of a turn of events for him in this episode, because basically that FBI agent popped up again asking about the 8 bodies. Apparently, even during that collapse, they still resurfaced. So he came questioning Fusco about it. And it completely slipped my mind that he was a bad guy, because I forgot that he's the one that was trying to convince Fusco to let go the whole Dominic and Elias thing, that there being another shooter. He's like, oh no, it's like, oh, the whole thing is looking kind of bad in your case, but he's like, oh no, you're actually a good guy. You try to stop some 2 bad people from escaping or something like that. And Fusco was kind of like, yo, wait, what? And there was another guy, I forgot, that other guy was the good guy. He was the one that died from a quote-unquote heart attack. So I forgot this guy was a bad guy. So he tried to kill Fusco after trying to figure out what Fusco knew. Shot Fusco, but Fusco was wearing a bulletproof vest and got the upper hand on him. Basically, we don't know what happens after that, though, because it's kind of a question of, wait, did Fusco kill him or not? Because Fusco's like, I could kill you. Like, I could take you in, because if I did, obviously that'd be being a good guy, but that could mean that you have an opportunity to get out later on and come after me and my family, or I could stoop to your level and be evil like you and kill you now. So it's like, which one should I do? And they kind of cut away from that. So obviously I feel like he's going the righteous path, because I thought the whole situation was going to end with him, putting him down on the ground, and there's like other cops pop up and like, hey, I set you up from the beginning. I knew you were a bad guy to begin with. But it's like, I don't know. Because it's like, at what point in time did Fusco put on a bulletproof vest? I guess just in his situation, with the way circumstances are, he's always wearing one now, just never knowing where the next bullet's going to come from. Especially, there's been occasions where he's gotten shot, so. But, yeah. Like I said, other than that, we had John and Shaw playing their roles, but it was, like I said, it was to a, minor degree. Obviously, they took down some Samaritan agents. There was specifically that particular agent that, John threw the knife in his back, and Shaw was like, "Thanks." That guy was getting annoying. He's a guy that you've seen him constantly popping up here and there. He's kind of one of the lead Samaritan agents that kind of like the one of their go-to agents currently, I guess. So it's official, dude. The series finale is next week. I stayed around after the show, after the credits, to be like, okay, like, what's this going to be? And it's also those words, series finale. I immediately turned around. I muted the TV because I want to go into this completely blind. Now, this wasn't the most action-packed episode, but it's still a very good episode because, I think I heard some complaints. I think I read some complaint like around the time I was uploading last week's episode about like, oh, it's not the episode they were, was it IGN I was reading that from? Was like, oh, it's not the episode they were thinking it was. Like I said, I've read one sentence of it. I try not to, I'm weird. I classify these as reviews, but I'm weird. I don't like reviews. I don't read any. To me, I don't really count these as reviews. I really count them as just me talking about them. But it's like, if you want to get specific about it, you can be like, yeah, that's technically all reviews are. It's just, I don't like putting things on a grading system. That's all. Nevertheless, there was like, oh, it's not the episode you were expecting. And because last episode, I was thinking like, it would have been something a little bigger. It's like, oh, the president's in danger. I thought, we got a little more Harold going, kind of off the deep end, kind of with the machine back in. And I kind of thought the same thing this episode. Fortunately not, like, Harold has kind of maintained the same mission. It's something that he brought up the Samaritan. Is the fact of the matter is, the Samaritan is only kind of doing what it believes. It's like, oh yeah, it's doing what's best for it in the sense of it gaining more control over everything. Whereas the machine has has always served the best purpose of, it's always serve the same purpose of making sure that people doing its best to help people, to help humanity. So, and I saw the preview last week, and I was like, oh, I saw Harold shoot somebody, and I was like, oh crap! And you see that in this episode, it's like, oh, he just hit the guy with a sedative. I thought he shot him. So things didn't go the direction I thought they were, but still a very good episode. And with the virus activated, I don't know how this is going to end. Obviously, Samaritan's going down. We saw a little bit of the screen flickering when the episode ended, but it's like, where will that lead the machine? Will the machine die too? Like, Samaritan's kind of down its head honcho because Greer is dead now too. So what's everyone's fate now? Will, with its dying breath, will Samaritan send everyone after the machine and its followers with everything it's got? Like, like I said before, don't think there are going to be any happy endings. Like I said, that was kind of what I read before, and it's like, there's no telling where this can go. This could leave with good endings. This could leave with bad endings, sad endings. Who knows what they'll do with it. I'm really excited. Like I said, I know next to nothing about this. I've avoided the preview as much as possible because I wanted to go into this blind. If you wanted to see the preview, that's 100% fine with you. I just didn't want to because, like, I have a hard time ignoring those. Like, I try my best to sometimes. Most times I check them just to make sure there's a new episode next week. So that's what I wanted to see. I actually didn't even, well, I don't think it's a special anything like a 2-hour or anything. I think it's like a regular episode. But the series finale, I'm very interested to see how it ends. Some possible theories is obviously maybe the machine is going to die. And maybe we end up finding out, it's like, oh no, the machine's not actually dead. There's still a little spark of life left waiting to be reanimated. It's just like, because, I don't know. I feel like that's what it's going to be. It's going to come down to a final showdown between everybody, Samaritan agents and, the team, and, Samaritan's dying, and maybe the machine makes a big sacrifice and ends up, dying with Samaritan, kind of like a bit of a kamikaze, I guess you could say. But it's like, oh, everything's quiet, life kind of returns to normal, and then we see that the machine is actually still a little spark of it, because we found out last episode, was it? Yeah, that there were some teams obviously serving the machine, and maybe we'll end up finding out there's actually that little spark of the machine has led to other people stepping. Maybe that's what it'll be. It's kind of be like a revolution that, even when they fall, because I kind of brought this up last episode, but even when they fall, there will be other people that pick up the fight after them. Like, there'll be a little message, like the message we heard at the beginning of the episode, when the machine is gone, maybe when Harold, John, maybe Fusco too, and Shaw are all gone, that message is there to inspire everyone else to go out and fight the good fight to protect those who are considered irrelevant. So maybe, just spitballing some ideas here. Just like I said, I am legitimately sad to see this show go. I was hoping, like I said, it would have been interesting if they were to do kind of like a, like I said, a little bit of a thing like The Mentalist, where it's like, yeah, the whole Red John situation, and then like partway through season six, it kind of was like the new beginning for Jane. It would have been kind of interesting if they did that, but obviously, you know, CBS has made its decision, and I'm sure the creators are kind of okay with that too. Maybe it'd be a situation of like the show will come back in a different shape or form, you know, lots of things. I mean, it's not too crazy because there's plenty of like, you know, properties that are like, oh, have got their hardcore fan base, and they're like, yo, bring the show back, so they might bring it back. Obviously, it will most likely be, you know, depending on how this ends, it will. I get the feeling no matter how it ends, honestly, it will be with different characters. But I feel like with the way this possibly might end, you know, bad endings for everyone, that it will, you know, if it were to reboot later on down the road, it'd be under different circumstances with different people. But I get the feeling it's going to be one of those things, like, even though it's like has bad endings, even though these characters might die, the point in the matter is they were here, they lived, they existed, they fought for all those people who were considered irrelevant. They fought when you didn't even realize someone was there fighting for you. They were fighting for you behind the shadows, making sure that you survive, looking out for you to make sure that you escape, you know, and that you lived your life to stop bad guys, you know. And there have been a lot of people who have lost their lives along the way, but it was worth it. That basically, when it's all said and done, you can't say that it wasn't worth it. Because that was kind of something Harold had thrown out there. He was like, you know, even with the situation with Samaritan, he's like, if you compared the what if reality to what reality is now, he's like, things didn't really change that much without the machine. Life wasn't worse or better. It was just different. But it's like, no, if it weren't for the machine, because Samaritan would have existed with or without the machine, as we can see, because it would have happened sooner or later, no matter what, even if the machine wasn't there. But without the machine, there was no one there powerful enough to combat it, no one there to stand in its way. They weren't there because they weren't a team, because, I mean, let's face it, John was dead, and just the teams didn't even know about the situation. So without the machines, this battle never would have been fought. Like, the world wouldn't be in a, like the world would kind of be completely under Samaritan's control, it'd be unstoppable. There'd be no one to keep it in line, to keep it in check, because, like, you know, as you can see with everyone that serves Samaritan, everyone believes, like, especially Greer, he was just kind of like, let Samaritan go, like, let it handle its own business. Like, you know, because Harold had brought up the fact is that originally, you know, it was supposed to be something of good. Its creator created it with the sole purpose of good, but it got corrupted by Greer. But he was kind of like, no, Samaritan's kind of acting of its own volition, so I don't know. Like I said, just some stuff that was just kind of crossing my mind. But that's really all I wanted to say in this episode. I do apologize. This one, I just looked at the time. It's been a very, very long one. Nevertheless, like I said, series finale next week. Cannot wait. But to the next time we meet, guys, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.